We've built an entire industry around the pursuit of motivation. Podcasts, YouTube channels, books, retreats, all of them selling the feeling of wanting to do hard things, as though the feeling is the thing. But look at the people who actually produce. The people who write consistently, train consistently, or build consistently over decades. Most of them will tell you the same thing. They are not consistently motivated. They just stopped waiting to be motivated and started acting. Here's the part that nobody puts in the video. The feeling isn't what starts the work. The work is what starts the feeling. That inversion changes everything, and it's been known for over 100 years. Welcome to Perspectus, a channel where we break down ideas, concepts, and moments from history to help you think sharper and see clearer. We're looking to build a community of people committed to growth, perspective, and understanding. If that's you, you're in the right place. So, you've watched a video, maybe more than one, the kind with dramatic music and slow motion footage, a voice telling you that today is your day and it's the day you decide who you're going to be. And for about 20 minutes after, you really do feel it, that surge inside of you, that sense that things are about to change, that this time it will be different. And then as quickly as it came, it fades. It always does. And you're left sitting in the same chair with the same unfinished things in front of you, wondering why you can't seem to hold on to the feeling long enough to take action. Here's the thing that people don't tell you about motivation. It doesn't last. It's not supposed to. Let's be honest about what motivation actually is. You wake up in the mornings and you want to do the thing. The project, it feels exciting. It feels meaningful or novel. You sit down and the hours disappear. That's real and that matters. But then there's other mornings where the same project at the same desk and the same you are all there, but you don't want to do it. The thing feels heavier. The resistance is higher. It doesn't feel as awe-inspiring or exciting. You open the browser tab, you close it again. You open it again. You close it again. The cycle repeats. And if your only plan was to be motivated, you're essentially done before you've even started. Psychologists have studied this carefully. Self-determination theory distinguishes between intrinsic motivation, which is doing something because it's meaningful, and extrinsic motivation, which is doing it for a reward. Both of these are real, but here's what the research shows. Motivation is very state dependent. It responds to energy, mood, stress, and sleep. Even deeply meaningful work has days without all of these components. This would allow you to draw more of a comparison for motivation to be similar to a weather system rather than an engine. This is because it arrives on its own schedule. You could create better conditions for it, but you cannot make it stay. Most of us already know this because we've felt the cycle. We've been hit by it. You get that burst of energy that starts the project, and then slowly but surely you get the gradual fade. And then that might even sink into guilt. And then you begin the search again for another hit of motivation to restart. And the cycle continues. The solution isn't better motivation. Instead, it should be building something that doesn't depend on motivation itself. And the people who figured this out weren't productivity coaches. They were philosophers. One of them said it better than anyone else has managed to since. The concept of the flywheel. In 1890, a Harvard psychologist named William James published The Principles of Psychology. This is still considered as one of the most important works in the history of this discipline. James was obsessed with one question. Why do people do what they do? And what he found was not inspiration, not motivation, and not willpower. It was habit. Habit, he wrote, is the enormous flywheel of society. This wasn't a metaphor. He meant this literally. The brain physically grows into repeated actions. Neural pathways deepen. Sequences that once required effort become automatic. Eventually, you don't decide to act. The action just decides itself. The great thing, he wrote, is to make our nervous system our ally instead of our enemy. This is the insight that most of the modern productivity industry is built on. However, most don't credit this at all. The goal is not to summon the feeling every day. The goal is to build a structure so habituated that the feeling becomes irrelevant. You show up because you show up. That's the whole mechanism. James was a pragmatist. His philosophy rooted in what actually works. But the same insight appears 4 centuries earlier on the other side of the world. Confucius taught that the Junzi, this is an exemplary person, sometimes translated as the gentleman or the superior individual. He taught that they are not born superior. Instead, they become so through daily self-cultivation, not through dramatic moral tests, but through small repeated practices in ordinary daily interactions. This could be study or self-reflection. It's action aligned with principle, day after day, without waiting for the right feeling. I am not born with the knowledge I have, Confucius wrote. I am one who is fond of antiquity and earnest in seeking it there. He is describing what discipline looks like before it has a name. The daily return, the refusal to wait for readiness. James in 1890, Confucius in 500 BC. They talk about the same mechanism, but it was found independently, separated by 2,000 years and the entire world. However, it still works because it's true. So, what do the days actually look like of a person who is disciplined? Maya Angelou rented a hotel room, not to stay in it and not for comfort. She rented it by the month, arrived at 7 in the morning, and wrote on yellow legal pads until 2 in the afternoon. The room had nothing in it she didn't bring herself. A Bible, a thesaurus, a bottle of sherry. There were no distractions, no ambience, just the work. She didn't wait to feel like a writer. She went to the room. The muse, she said, only shows up when I'm already working. That's not a metaphor. That's the psychology of motivation correctly understood. The feeling follows the action, not the other way round. Angelou's hotel room was the mechanism, a structure that produced the conditions for work without requiring her to feel like working first. Benjamin Franklin was doing something similar, in an even more deliberate way. In 1726, Franklin created a small notebook. He identified 13 virtues he wanted to embody: temperance, order, frugality, industry, sincerity, justice, and others. He drew a grid, 1 virtue per column, 1 day per row. Every evening he reviewed the day and marked each failure with a dot. He cycled through all 13 virtues in 13 weeks, then started again. 4 cycles a year. He kept this up for most of his adult life. Not because he was naturally disciplined, because he wasn't. Instead, he was treating character like a ledger. The dots diminished over time, not because Franklin found motivation, but because he built a system that made self-examination automatic. It was daily, it was a non-negotiable. Neither of these people were waking up fired up every morning, but instead they had built structures that ran whether the feeling was there or not. James calls it making the nervous system an ally. Confucius called it daily cultivation. Angelou just showed up to the room, and Franklin filled in the chart, but they're all describing the same thing. How can we remove the daily decision? Here's the part where this becomes practical. In 1999, a psychologist named Peter Gollwitzer published research on what he called implementation intentions. The concept is simple, the effect is not. Most goal setting is very vague. Something like, I want to exercise more, or I'm going to write every day, or I'll be better with my money. These sound like a plan, but they're not actually plans. They're just vague wishes. And when the moment arrives, It could be raining, or you could be tired, or you could be annoyed or upset. And the easier option is right there. And you take it, and the wish dissolves because you don't follow through. An implementation intention, however, is very different because it's specific. It takes the form of, when X happens, I will do Y. It's not just, I'll exercise more. Instead, it would be something like, when I get home from work, I'll put my shoes on and leave the door within 5 minutes. Another example is, I'll write every day. Instead, it's, when I sit down with a coffee at 7 a.m., I will open up a document and write for 25 minutes before I do anything else with my day. Gollwitzer's research found that this specific when-then structure tripled goal completion rates. Not because people were trying it more or had more willpower, but because they had removed the decision. The daily question, am I going to do this today, is where motivation essentially goes to die. Every time you have to decide whether you're going to do the thing, you create an opportunity for the answer to be no. Discipline is not properly understood. It is the elimination of that question entirely. The decision should be already made. The plan is already formed. In the moment, all you should have to do is execute. Franklin's chart removed the decision about whether to track his virtues. Angelou's hotel room removed the decision about where to write. The structure runs. All you have to do is arrive and take action. This is what discipline actually is. It's not gritted teeth and willpower, because that depletes, that fades, that never lasts. Discipline, instead, is the architecture that makes showing up the path of least resistance. At the heart of this, there's a paradox, and it becomes obvious once you see it. Discipline is freedom. It sounds wrong because discipline initially feels like a constraint. It's the alarm or the routine or the showing up when you don't really want to. But the person without discipline is not free. They're at the mercy of their mood. Every day is actually just a negotiation with themselves about whether today is the day they'll do what actually matters. And a mood is notoriously unreliable, so it's not a very good negotiating partner. The disciplined person has already settled the question. The work happens at the same time, in the same way, regardless of how they feel. Their energy isn't spent on making the decision. Instead, you just invest all your energy into doing the work. Motivation is the visitor. It shows up sometimes uninvited, and when it does, it makes everything feel easier. It makes the hours disappear. It's real and it matters, and when it arrives, you should take full advantage and use it. But you cannot build a life on this visitor. Discipline, instead, is the house. It remains there when the visitor doesn't arrive, which is most days, for most people, across most of your working life. And this is what Angelou knew, and what Franklin was proving with his dots, and what James put into words, and what Confucius practiced 2,000 years before him. The visitor shows up more often and stays longer inside a house that has already been built. You should not wait to feel like it. You should build the structure instead. And then you show up inside it every day until showing up is who you are. If you found value in this, make sure to like and subscribe to join the Perspectus community. We're looking to build something meaningful here, and I'd like to hear your perspective too, so drop it in the comments below. I'll see you in the next one.